Oh my God. It's a Cylon fleet. They found us. They found us.
We have to get out of here, sir.
You can't just leave all those people behind.
There's nothing we can do. It's taking us forever just to get to action stations over here. We're in no shape for a fight, sir.
They'll be wiped out.
We don't have a choice. We need to get out of here right now.
All decks finally report condition 1, sir. Should we launch the alert fighters?
No. Begin jump prep. We're leaving. But we'll be back. Start your prep.
Mr. President! Mr. President?
Don't you know?
Gaius. Gaius!
Yeah, what is it?
The Cylons just jumped into orbit. And the fleets jumped away.
Judgment Day.
I'm Gaius Baltar, President of the Colonies.
I know who you are, guys. I know very well.
As long as you offer no resistance, you won't be harmed.
How do I know that?
You don't. You also don't have any choice.
How did you find us?
Well, it was quite by accident. Actually, we were over a light year away from here when we detected the radiation signature of a nuclear detonation.
Very well. On behalf of the people of the 12 colonies, I surrender.
"23 Cylons critically wounded. 14 had to be euthanized."
They had casualties too. 4 human dead.
Who gives a frack about that part of my language?
The power substation was crippled. almost half the city's without power, and our best estimates put the repairs at 2 weeks.
You still think we're being too hard on the human population?
We have a very serious, very straightforward problem. Either we increase control or we lose control. That's a fact. We think it's time for stronger measures.
We agree.
We agree.
We agree as well. How about you?
We agree also. Most of us do, anyway.
Enough.
What's this?
This order's a summary executions of all the detainees listed on the next page. It requires your signature.
My signature.
You're the president.
Read it later. Sign now.
Just because you've decided to do this doesn't mean you need to drag him into sin with you.
Don't you lecture me about sin. I'm not the one who committed the first act of Cylon on Cylon violence in our history.
What's she talking about?
She crushed my head in with a rock back on Caprica. Interesting she didn't tell you.
Something I had to do. I'm not proud of it.
This is all very interesting, very edifying. Sign the order.
You don't need my signature.
Well, actually, we do. We're here as allies and friends of the legitimate government of the colonies. You are the president, so everything we do requires your sanction.
In other words, they're worried about what God might think if they commit murder. They're covering their existential S's.
I won't do it. All right, I won't do it. You're going to have to solve your consciences some other way.
Then we'll find another president.
Stop this. This is crazy!
Dear God.
She'll be back. But if he pulls that trigger now, you won't.
Sign it! Sign it! Sign your name! Sign it! Sign it! Sign
There's
it!
nothing you can do, guys.
Sign your name on that thing!
It'll be okay.
It's you. Help me.
You have to sign it. They'll kill you if you don't.
Sign it! Sign it! Sign your name! Sign it!
I can't. I won't. You can't force...
Sometimes you have to do things you hate so you can survive to fight another day.
How do we measure loss? How do we measure loss? We measure it in the faces of the dead, the faces that haunt our memories and our dreams. How do we measure loss? We measure it in our own faces, the ones we see in the mirror every day, because it has marked each of us. So how do we measure loss? When the scale of it becomes too hard to absorb any other way, we use numbers. How many killed? How many maimed? How many missing? And when those numbers become too vast to comprehend, as they did 2 years ago, we had to turn it around. We began to count the living. Those of us who survived to continue the saga of the human race. 44,035. The sum total of survivors from the 12 colonies who settled on New Caprica, with President Gaius Baltar as their leader and protector. 38,838. Our number the day after we escaped. And the missing number? The one that no one wants to face. $5,197. 5,197 of us killed, left behind, or simply disappeared. 5,197 of all that remains of the human race. Lost. The citizens of the 12 colonies entrusted their fate and their lives to Gaius Baltar. What we received was a reign of terror that staggers our mind and breaks our hearts. Instead of governance, we got tyranny. Instead of justice, we got oppression. Instead of a president, we got a murderer. Today, humanity holds him accountable for his crime. Gaius Baltar is not a victim. Gaius Baltar chose to side with the Cylons and to actively seek the deaths of his fellow citizens. For that, he must pay the ultimate price.
Your Honors, the defense would like to change our plea to guilty.
What? Counselor, are you sure you want to do that?
No. But what choice do I have? I mean, it's obvious my client is guilty. He's a traitor and a killer. He's no better than the Cylon, and what do we do with them?
Throw him out the airlock!
That's right! Throw him out the airlock! This man sold us to our enemy. This man is our enemy. And if there's one thing that's good in war, that is right and just and proper, it's slaughtering our enemy. Getting some righteous payback. What are we waiting for? Let's just kill him now! It'd be easier, wouldn't it? Simpler. Justice of the mob. It's what they want. Especially her. She's been wanting this for over a year now. Ever since he beat her in a free and fair election of the people. Now she gets a chance to exact her revenge upon a man whose only real crime is bowing to the inevitable. Gaius Baltar saved the lives of the people on New Caprica, where Laura Roslin would have seen us all dead, victims of a battle we had no hope in winning. I don't know about you, but I'm glad she wasn't the president when the Cylons arrived and said, surrender or die. I owe my life to Gaius Baltar and the decision he made that day. So does Laura Roslin. For is the truth here, Mr. Adama? Let's have it. I'm waiting. Answer the question. You swore an oath as an officer of the court. If you don't answer the question, you hold the entire system of justice.
What fracking system?
Mr. Adama.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Please excuse my associate. All right. I'll try something else. Do you believe that the defendant deserves a fair trial.
As a matter of fact, I do.
Why?
Well, aside from the fact that everyone deserves a fair trial, I also happen to believe that he is not guilty of the charges
Your
and should
Honors,
be acquitted.
I must insist on an exception here. He cannot testify in this manner. It's completely improper.
I agree.
He can make his arguments in closing statements, not on the stand.
I'm inclined to agree with the prosecution.
Thank you.
You can appeal to the president if you feel that this influences the verdict. But I, for one, would like to hear this witness testify.
I would second that.
Continue.
Thank you, Your Honors. Mr. Adama? Mr. Adama?
Yes.
Why do you believe that the defendant, Gaius Baltar, deserves to be acquitted?
Well, because the evidence does not support the charges.
Come on.
Did the defendant make mistakes? Sure, he did. Serious mistakes, but did he actually commit any crimes? Did he commit treason? No. I mean, it was an impossible situation. When the Cylons arrived, what could he possibly do? What could anyone have done? I mean, ask yourself, what would you have done? What would you have done? If he had refused to surrender, the Cylons would have probably nuked the planet right then and there. So did he appear to cooperate with the Cylons? Sure. So did hundreds of others. What's the difference between him and them? The president issued a blanket pardon. They were all forgiven, no questions asked. Colonel Ty used suicide bombers, killed dozens of people, forgiven. Lieutenant Agathon and Chief Tyrrell, they murdered an officer on the Pegasus, forgiven. The Admiral instituted a military coup d'etat against the president, forgiven. And me? Well, where do I begin? I shot down a civilian passenger ship, the Olympic Carrier, over 1,000 people on board, forgiven. I raised my weapon to a superior officer, committed an act of mutiny, forgiven. And then, on the very day when Baltar surrendered to those Cylons, I, as commander of Pegasus, jumped away. I left everybody on that planet alone, undefended, for months. I even tried to persuade the Admiral never to return, to abandon you all there for good. If I'd had my way, nobody would have made it off that planet. I'm the coward. I'm the traitor. I'm forgiven. I'd say we're very forgiving of mistakes. We make our own laws now, our own justice. And we've been pretty creative at finding ways to let people off the hook for everything from theft to murder. And we've had to be. Because we're not a civilization anymore. We are a gang. And we're on the run. And we have to fight to survive. We have to break rules. We have to bend laws. We have to improvise. But not this time, no. Not this time. Not for Gaius Baltar. No. You have to die. You have to die because we don't like you very much. Because you're arrogant. Because you're weak. Because you're a coward. And we, the mob, we want to throw you out the airlock because you didn't stand up to the Cylons and get yourself killed in the process. That's justice now. You should have been killed back on New Caprica, but since you had the temerity to live, we're going to execute you now. That's justice.
Order! Order!
This case is built on emotion, on anger, bitterness, vengeance, but most of all, it is built on shame. It's about the shame of what we did to ourselves back on that planet. And it's about the guilt of those of us
who ran away. Who ran away. And we're trying to dump all that guilt and all that shame onto one man. And then flush him out the airlock and hope that that just gets rid of it all. So that we can live with ourselves. But that won't work. That won't work. That's not justice. Not to me. Not to me.
No further questions.
Before I read the verdict, I'd like to make one thing clear. Like everything human, justice is imperfect. It's flawed. But it's those very imperfections that separates us from the machines. And maybe even makes us a species worth saving. The defendant will rise. Gaius Baltar. After carefully weighing the evidence, this tribunal, on a vote of 3-2, finds you not guilty.